lack of evidence and so on. But from my observation, we can follow the animal by finding the traditional trail or by going to the Permatang, and we can exactly follow what animal we want to study. So the same thing at the middle of a peninsula, we have Krau Game Reserve. We're supposed to be connected to Taman Negara. Unfortunately, you still have the same problem of having roads, highway everywhere to fragment the area, and we have viaduct there. But the question is that viaduct being the traditional trail of the animal crossing back and forth? Nobody have the data. So we built without even having the fundamental information. But that's not bad. You still have a viaduct or several viaducts to solve the animal problem. And then if you go down to the south, you have Endarompin, supposed to be connected to everything else. If you go to Endarompin area, and if you travel all around Endarompin, you can drive all around, you'll see oil palm. So while it looks great on paper, the ground is not owned by the government. These are private land, and there have never been any initiative to acquire those land for whatever corridor that they are talking about. So saya tak nampak benda ni berjalan. Dan if you say it should be interconnected, it's just animals just like us. If you are orang Negeri Sembilan and your boss send you to work in Jeli, you will write a letter to Pengulu and the Menteri not to be transferred there. Animals also refuse to leave their homeland. If they are born in Endarompin, then you capture them and send it to Belum, they will come out and try to find their way home. So this is animal, they have an instinct. This is not my home, this is not my territory, and this is not what I want to be. So what we want is to solve the problem, but you are creating another problem. You have a lot of accident around Belum area, those block of forest, you can see elephant coming up and so on. These are elephant being transferred there because there's no more place for the elephant. So you have to rethink, we have to rethink again about the idea of the central spine. The theory is good, the data is not there in the first place when they built the viaduct. So the consultant, they just farm it out to another researcher to find some data, so they put up camera trap. Camera trap will never ever tell you about the ecology and biology of the animal. So for those who work on camera trap, listen this 1 million times. You never ever understand about the ecology, the behavior of the animal. So you can put 1 million traps, camera trap there, you can never understand their biology or ecology. You have to go to the field and study the animal, put radio collar and follow the animal, check their feces and what they were eating and where they are roaming. These are real field work. You don't just go doing Photoshop thing, having camera all around the country and talk about biology. Something is not correct. Theoretically, it's not correct. And even that, those who have been using camera trap have been making a lot of prediction. When I read their prediction, I asked, what is the biological fundamental theory that they're working on? So they are making projection, prediction, not based on the real work as an ecologist. So you just put your camera there, download the data, and try to make a lot of assumption without really understanding, seeing the animal or tracking the animal. So the second part of the question, having known that 70 mammals are on the threatened list, the first one to go will be the large animal. We have seen that you take the elephant from one area and you translocate it. It will never work. Where are the data saying that this animal really reproduce after you have relocated for the last 20 years, I guess? I remember the first translocation was done in the 1980s when they were inundating the dam in Kenya. And where are the data? Show me the data that these translocated animals are reproducing. So the benchmarking of a successful translocation is that the animal reproduce. Kita tak ada data, kita tak ada data because nobody have done long-term study. What we have are very quick snapshot of the studies that for bachelor student, master student, or for PhD student, but we don't have 20 or 30 years data on that particular population in one particular group. So the next animal that's going to be extinct will be the canopy animal. So animal living in the canopy, the primates, they are going to be extinct as you protect the forest. At the same time, the forest can be logged. So the area is not 100% be given the protection as you would like. So it can be under the forestry, various form of protection, but they also have the right to do some extraction of timber and so on, and thus would break the canopy and would disturb all those canopy animals, the birds as well as the primates. And having loss of those animals, who is going to regenerate your forest? Are you going to ask somebody to plant your forest? We are in a dilemma. We want to plant 100 million trees, but we are planting where we can drive our BMW or Mercedes, take photograph and show on the Facebook. Anybody would walk few kilometers into the forest and replant where the mata was or where they have locked the area. I remember when I was a student in ITM, we have this latihan industry in Mantin and also in Temelo. We were given Acacia mangium. And Acacia mangium is a pest species in Australia. And the World Bank, with our money, billion of money, we were told to plant acacia mangium. And acacia mangium is very bad for biodiversity because the area is like a desert for the animal. So it's not a good species to be planted for our forest to replace our local species. But then because we are taking the money from the World Bank and they have a consultant who are supposed to be intelligent, they give us stupid species to be planted in our forest. So I have to say this because if you look at a lot of information taken from acacia mangium, is just not the correct diversity that is coming back into the acacia forest. So why are we planting that pest species in Australia and not planting our own indigenous species to repopulate the forest as well as to bring back our local wildlife into the forest? Then the other problem that is threatening our rivers are the exotic species. They have tilapia cage farm. They have a lot of things, and this tilapia are now everywhere in our ecosystem, and they are threatening our own local species in the lake and rivers. So in the future, you have a lot of tilapia, but you will find it's difficult to find our temole or our kelah or our empurau because that tilapia is very aggressive species that can adapt to every niches in the aquatic ecosystem. So where is this Malaysian biodiversity policy that talks about invasive species when we are bringing in one species or two species, acacia as well as tilapia, to name two species that are really causing havoc for our biodiversity conservation for the future. I hope, Prof, I'm answering your question, or I might be stepping on the toes. He agreed, and then he invited us to talk in the mosque and also give public lecture in the hall with the community. And after that, there was a decree by the Mufti of Terengganu saying that if you take any wildlife without any permission, it's haram, meaning that you are going to go to hell if you are doing that, and you are going to be very sinful if you are a Muslim taking those animals without permission, without permit, without approval from the wildlife department. So these are the sort of research that should be done by the researcher. The other thing, the researchers should focus on applied research for the wildlife department to determine whether this area is going to be good for the release of seladang or not. So when they release some animal, the next day they find carcass. People hunt the animal. So the next species going to go in our extinction list are all the large animals. Tape, after tiger, it would be tape, elephant, seladang, as well as in Borneo, it would be orangutan would be gone from the surface of the earth. When Alfred Wallace visited Malacca in 1854, he wrote that he saw elephant and tiger tracks. while he was on the way from Melaka to Mount Ope, which is Gunung Ledang. You have to read the Malay archipelago. And where are the elephant and seladang, tiger in those areas? It's gone. It's gone. But it's been documented by Alfred Russel Wallace. Then he went over to Sarawak and he documented orang utan in the surrounding area of Kuching town. But where are the orangutan right now? They are deep in the forest and still be hunted or been disturbed by other means for our economic growth. So these are the animal that we have to take care. We have to give more money. Okay, when you talk about money, then you have to ask the question: how much are we willing to pay for the conservation? So there have been work by Vincent. It's very low. And there have been work in Kelantan, how much they are willing to pay for the conservation. I think in Kelantan, they are willing to pay 4 ringgit and 20 cents. 4 ringgit and 20 cents will not save tiger, elephant, seladang, or the primate in the forest. I think we have to be willing to give more money for conservation, maybe 100 ringgit a month or 100 ringgit a year for the purpose of conservation.
So, right? So I don't need to say anything anymore. You just said it all. Thank you so much for that.
You're welcome.
All right, let me just swap to my presentation. Let me know if you see the screen.
All right, we see your screen, Greg.
See screen? Okay, perfect, fantastic. Okay, so first of all, thank you very much for allowing me to be part of that conference. I catch up a bit on the previous speaker, and that was fantastic talks as well, and a lot of insightful information. So my presentation, we talk a bit about Marriott's and what we do in terms of sustainability as well, and what hotels I've started doing some long ago, some recently, and some best practices we've done in Malaysia, right? So Marriott has what is called in each country a business council, right? The business council basically is an extended arm of Marriott culture in the country, right? The aim of it is to enhance the presence of the company, and as well as through the different communities, engaging with government bodies, and as well as throughout the associates we work with, developing leadership, networking, and of course professional growth for our talents, right? This is how the setup is done in Malaysia for the business council. So because we have at the moment 37 properties in Malaysia across 16 brands represented, and we have another 16 hotels opening up over the next 4 years, right? So we have now about slightly over 10,000 rooms with 4,000 associates in our hotel. So we divided the presence in four different councils or sub councils. Number one is the central part, where most of the hotels, it's mostly city hotels, right? Southern part, which is in Singapore, we have 3 hotels. We opened one recently, the 4 Points in the Saru earlier this week. We have as well the northern part, which is more towards the Langkawi part of it as well, and then the eastern, which is Sarawak and Sabah, where we have a couple of hotels. So quite a diversity in terms of properties, and each of these areas have a sub-council chair who is there, and the aim again is to make the Marriott culture live, but as well all the projects we do within the company, we do with our associates and with the community, to be sure we are able to expand them throughout our presence. When we talk about, you mentioned earlier about the core values of Marriott, right? So company has 5 core values. So I'm just going to name them in, and then we spend a bit of time towards the last one, which is serve our world. So the first one is what we call put our people first. Look, at the end of the day, the industry, it's all about people. So taking care of our associates means we take care as well of our customers, right? We talk about pursuing excellence. So dedicating to customer service, embracing change. And I think that sustainability in a way talks about embracing change, talks about innovation, acting with integrity. Because we do business in so many countries, it's important to have clear guidelines on how we do business. And the last part, serve our world, which talk about our spirit to serve as well, right? So when we talk about serving our world or trying to do good in every direction, right? So the company Marriott is really committed in making a positive and sustainable impact wherever we do business. As I said, we have 37 properties at the moment in the country, right? So we want to be sure that we are responsible in what we do, that we commit to our actions, to our words as well. We have in place sustainable business practices that benefits the environment and as well the communities in which we operate. Something important whenever a hotel is developed and is built, there's a lot of points to take into account: the environment, the communities in which we're going to operate and work at the same time. So having this as a core value, right, allows us to work towards addressing main points such as, for example, climate change, scarce natural resources, and the evolving needs of the planet. And I believe that lately there was a conference as well in Europe about sustainability, about climate change, and I think that topic really comes in at the right time. So we want as well to be transparent. Whatever we do in a company, whatever we do in the specific sense of sustainability, we report it and we record it. We have an intranet system that allows us to put any information. We want to be sure that we hold ourselves accountable, and that, of course, we increase the resiliencies of the community where we have our hotels. With sustainable, responsible operations, right? Nowadays, I think that business plays an increasingly critical role in taking on the world's most pressing social, environment, and economic issues, right? With the size of the company, as I mentioned, 7,500 hotels, and more coming in, right? We want to be sure that as well we have a global responsibility, and that's our, in this case, our sustained responsible operations goes through each of our property. That we try to be ultimately a force of good. We've put guidelines in place, which we call our 2025 sustainability and social impact goals. We want to be sure we commit a positive impact wherever we work. We collaborate not only with our own talents and associates, but based on different brands, the customers, the owners of the hotel, and the guests. We want to be sure that everyone has the same message. We partner as well with a lot of suppliers. We try to, I guess if I can say, educate our partners to follow the same vision. How do we build and operate hotels that are more and more sustainable? Hotels built 20, 30 years ago compared to hotels built recently use different materials, use different equipment. So technology as well has changed. How do we communicate and report what we do? As I said earlier, we have a system in place that allows us to enter all these informations and track what each property is doing. How do we develop sustainable initiatives? How do we educate internally and externally as well our talents, our partners, our owners, our customers? How do we integrate sustainability throughout our supply chain? Biodiversity and ecosystem protection as well. Carbon footprint, climate change, and different natural resources. How we conserve them? How we ensure that water and waste pollution restrictions are in place? How do we ensure that we manage water risk issues? I think all that goes through I would say, almost day-to-day topics in our hotels as we try to actively communicate that to our teams. And you see the couple of goals that we've set for our 2025. How to reduce water intensity, how to reduce carbon, renewable energies. And again, because technology evolves in such a way, it allows us as well to try to be on top of that technology and implement it in our properties. And I give you a couple of examples of what we've done. This is what we've done here in my hotel at the Westin in KL. In in 2018, end of 2018, we analyzed, in each room you have these little plastic bottles, right, of water that we give. And in 2018, we used about 408,000 of these plastic bottles, right, only for the rooms. We started taking account banquets and other areas of the hotel. And we said, wow, A, it's a lot of plastic. B, who knows really where the plastic goes and how does it end up in the landfill, and see what can we do to try to minimize that impact on the environment. So we did a fair bit of researches through different companies that have water treatment plants. And then we started to install a water treatment plant in the hotel, as you can see on the pictures, right? So we filter the water that comes in through the hotel. There's carbon filters and UV lights as well to make the water drinkable. So the water is we do a lab analysis on regular basis to be sure the quality of the water is still there. And so far, it has been pretty good. We use glass bottles simply because the sustainability of the glass is much longer compared to the plastic bottles, even through different cycle of washing. And the multifunctional washers you see there doesn't use chemical at all. It's really high temperature washing, so around 86 degrees Celsius, right? And because the water that is treated without chemicals, at the end of the day, you simply filter the water. So the entire process doesn't use any chemical. And we launched that end of 2019, and we had really positive feedback from our customers because they saw that at the end of the day, the hotel is trying to make some, I guess I can say some efforts, and is really trying to be a bit more conscious about the environment, and they're trying to be a bit more conscious as well how to share that message. And since then, we had a few hotels that have been working with that ask us how this works and that has implemented such systems. So it's really simple. We have one of our talents who looks after that on a daily basis, and we implemented that not in the rooms, we implemented that as well through our banquet functions and in the restaurant. So everywhere we are able to say, look, we produce our own water. We don't have wastage neither at the same time. The system works when you fill the bottle, it works by pressure, so you never waste water neither. And again, we don't use any chemicals when we clean the bottles, right? When we wash the bottles. So that's something that we found quite an interesting concept. And the company that does that is called EcoPure. It's based in England and has done these devices for the past 20 years and done quite a fair bit of hotels, even a few in the country. So whenever anyone has a chance to come and visit the Westin, please let me know. I'll be happy to show you around. It's it doesn't take much space, and I think it's a very user-friendly system at the same time. Another practice that we started here in KL, but that one of our hotels in Langkawi has done as well. We partnered with a local company called Boomgrow Farm, right? That do indoor farming, so hydroponic farming. And look, we were, whenever and the hotels, when you do heavy banquets, when you do heavy dining in the hotel, you purchase a lot of goods, and a lot of the time these goods come in plastic, so you waste the plastic, and most of the time you waste as well a bit of the produce. You end up having some wastage, right? So we did some research. Our sister property in Langkawi started that project, and you can see that container is an indoor farm ultimately inside that container, and whatever is grown, it's all grown without chemicals. So you use 100% of the vegetables, so you don't have wastage. The vegetable stays fresh for a period of 7 days. I try to go and buy supermarket the vegetable and keep it 7 days in the fridge. After 7 days, you might not have the same look and feel, nor potentially the same taste. And we did that test as well with these vegetables, and the taste is fantastic, right? And it's possible to have different variances of vegetables. You can grow the vegetables that you only want. So that opportunity was put in Langkawi, works extremely well, had really good feedback, and we started doing it here in the hotel through our breakfast buffet as well, and through our dinner buffet. And the feedback, something from the customers, has been pretty positive. The taste is really good, and if you like vegetables, and I think it's important to eat vegetables at the end of the day. I think that that's something that makes sense. So this company we partner with has a lot of indoor farming around the country, and we've been very, very satisfied with the quality, the fact there's no wastage, there's no chemical use neither. So it's I think you know, I've seen in a lot of big cities as well that there's more and more of this type of indoor farming that exist, and because I guess as city expansions comes in, as country expands as well, it's not easy to have big lands or big fields in the city. So in France, where I come from, I know there's a lot of buildings that start having rooftop farming as well. So I think depending how the climate is, but that makes a bit of a difference, and it's something that works. So I think it's great that we have this opportunity to do that in KL, and of course in other states. And you can see the vegetables. There is the real photos, and the photo is not Photoshop. It's real vegetables as they come in to the hotel and as they are delivered to us. So it's just something that we found. It's small steps, you know, but it's good that hotels start doing that. And I think it's good to educate our customers and our associates and our colleagues as well on the opportunities that are around that sometimes we might not be able to see. Another sustainability project that some of our hotels have done, one of our hotels in KL, the Aloft in KL Central, has a bit of space on one of their rooftop areas, and they decided to grow their own spice garden. Right? They started that just before COVID, and since then I've been able to maintain the space. You can see the setup that is done, and it's great because you must have the passion for gardening. You know, if you don't have it, it doesn't work. So they have a bunch of chefs and talents as well that are really passionate about it. They really maintain it. So they grow based on the space they have. They grow some of the vegetables, and I think and then they reuse that through the canteen for the staff or through the restaurant for the guests. So, and you know, my father is really huge into gardening, and you can really taste the difference when vegetables come from the garden, and you can say, hey, this comes from my garden. I think the Aloft has done that extremely well by promoting that whatever they're able to grow in the garden. You know, we talk about Thai basil, butterfly pea flower, bird's chilies, eggplant. So it's quite good, but again, it's the passion that you need to put in there, and it's great to use that empty space to turn it into something positive at the same time. So I think that, you know, that talks about how growing vegetables is possible in big cities, and if you don't have a garden space, we have this indoor farming that works. If you have a bit of space, you can really transform it into a nice little garden. The next part of it is a bit different. You know, I talked earlier about the plastic bottles. Now, whenever you go to hotels, and it doesn't matter how many stars the hotel has, you always have these little bathroom amenities bottles, right? And when you think about it, once you use the bottle, you're going to use it once. You squeeze it just once. You cannot reuse the bottle. So that creates a lot of wastage, right? Even if you take it home, at the end of the day, you still waste it, right? And we have about, in Asia Pacific, around 800 over hotels in Asia Pacific. And we estimate that there's about 500 million of these little tiny bottles that potentially go to the landfill, which is huge when you think about it. And the busier you are, the busier usage you have, right? So Marriott as a whole and through its different brands has looked into changing these little bottles with dispensers, right? When I worked in the Aloft in Care Central, some brands already have these dispensers, you know. And in the beginning, it looks like strange. How come? Usually, I used to have my shampoo, my conditioner in these little bottles, but now you have it in containers, wall mounted, that are recyclable as well, right? So what it means is that you reduce dramatically the waste of these little plastic bottles. B, when you buy ultimately the equipment, you buy big containers. So you don't buy just little plastic bottles. So you can use big containers to refill ultimately the dispenser, right? See, the dispensers are made that they're tamper-proof as well. So if you damage it, you break it, It means you cannot change whatever you refill, right? And the whole idea behind it is to reduce plastic waste. At least, more than 35% reduction in plastic would be resulted by replacing this non-recyclable amenities bottles by recyclable item. And so Marriott work with different suppliers to be sure they come with the right products, And reducing waste is something that is more and more important, because I think everyone is getting used now to segregating as well the waste. And you see that happening more often. There's some countries that are really extremely well developed into segregating different type of waste. We do it in the hotel as well. We're partnering with WWF in the sense of trying to do food waste management in the hotel. When we try to recycle cardboard, glass, and versus wet wastage. So it's an educational process. It's easy to say, it's much more complicated to do at the end of the day. And I think at home as well, getting into the habit of recycling is something that is not easy. I think we have to be fully honest with that. And the more we're able to bring that topic out, the more we're able to educate everyone to it. Take the extra 5 seconds it takes to move the plastic bottle from the right into the right bin rather than throwing it with everything else, right? And I think it's just about educating everyone to do that. So that's what we ultimately putting in place, and that will be implemented throughout all our hotels in Asia Pacific by June next year. And it becomes a brand standard for the company. So meaning that, everyone has to do it. It's not, you cannot say, me, I don't want to, I just take it as an option. No, it becomes mandatory. And I think that's something that is really important, because it forces the hotel to educate its own teams as well, but at the same time to educate customers. So when they travel from hotel to hotel, they can see there is a consistency in there. And I think that's important with everything that we do, not just from an hotel perspective, but when we talk about environmental sustainability, when we talk about reducing wastage, being consistent, I think, is the most difficult part. Having the idea is great. Applying it and being consistent, I always believe, is what is the most complicated. So that's quite a large project that Marriott is doing throughout Asia Pacific. The last best practice that hotels started doing, and a lot with COVID as well, is when you do your food deliveries, how you use recyclable packaging, sustainable packaging. So we started doing that in 2019 through banquets in our banqueting space, and with COVID, we were ultimately forced to review how we do. The food deliveries was the only thing available at that time. So we decided to or take away food, right? And we decided as well to keep on using sustainable packaging. Look, it might be a bit more expensive, but I think the impact on the environment is what is important. Again, it's not easy to implement. It's not easy to change the mindset, but I think it's a work that needs to be done throughout time, and working with our suppliers as well to educate them, on the products we want, to educate them when they come and deliver items to the hotel. Let's reduce to the maximum the wastage. And it's not about, cost cutting. It's about, being more alert from an environmental perspective rather than anything else, So that's in a real nutshell what Marriott does and what we do here in Malaysia in terms of sustainability, and how we try to make our little impact, because it's not just about one hotel doing it. It's trying to get all the hotels we have to do it. And with the business council, we have these meetings and these conversations on regular basis. We meet physically for the first time physically now after 1.5 years on a quarterly basis. Otherwise, we do it virtually. But it's good to have the engagement, not just of the general managers in the hotel, but for the rest of the teams, and how we communicate that throughout the property, how we able to explain it to our customers as well, why we choose such and such product or equipment versus something else. How does the recycling part becomes important? How we use with our waste collection company to be sure that, when they recycle, they do really recycle. The next project that we have that I'm looking at is trying to have a compost machine in the hotel where all the wet wastage from food goes into the compost machine and transforms it into compost. So I've started doing a bit of that work and trying to have that in place by early next year. So we can use the compost in our garden, or we can put it through the plants we have in the hotel. So the idea, not to be self-sufficient, it's a bit exaggerated, but I think the idea is to continue through that journey of making our little footprint to impact positively, I think, on the environment. So I just wanted to talk a bit about that initiatives that multiple hotels are doing, how the vision of the company is when we talk about serving our world from a sustainability perspective. There's a lot of other initiatives that Marriott does from serving our world. But I think it's important that big companies have these practices in place and are able to share them to make everyone realize, that, hey, we need to all pay the extra attention. So, it's a bit of a shorter presentation, but I thought that visual is sometimes a bit more of an impact rather than just text. And the visual is really taken from our hotels. So that's what I wanted to share today. And happy if there are any questions or any comments to go through it and answer them at any time.
All right. Oh, a massive thank you to you, Greg, for making time in your busy schedule for us. Just listening to you talk, it's comforting to know that such a big organization such as Marriott has an extensive policy and also a working practice and dedication towards SDGs that are related to your industry. So in a way, I feel a bit better spending the amount of money I have to spend when I want to stay in your hotels, knowing that it's put to good use. So it's quite comforting. But anyway, since we do have some time and we do have both of our panels here, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to open the floor for a panel Q&A. So what this means is that participants may post questions in the chat box, or you can just unmute your mic to ask questions directly. And if you have a specific speaker you want to talk to or you want to address your question to, you may mention their name. And otherwise, the speakers are free to pick up any of the questions if they wish to share their opinion. But I think I'm going to be a bit selfish first, because this is something that's been on my mind for quite a while. I want to pose this question to Greg. You know how during Ramadan you have a lot of those buffets, and there's a lot of food being prepared and served to the customers. So it's always, I've always wondered, where does all the remaining food go to after the buffet? I'm sure there's quite some waste.
It's a really good question, and I tell you what we've done for now. A couple of years, we partner with an association called Kechara Soup Kitchen.
Oh, right. Yep.
While we've partnered with them since 2014, if not mistaken.
Mm-hmm.
While we, on a weekly basis, we prepare food for them. And when it comes to Ramadan, because indeed the buffets are really extending a lot, right? So there's food that ultimately you can reuse, depending if it's on the live shelf ultimately. But there's food that instead of wasting it, we look at how long is the food being out on the buffet. Is it still fit for consumers? There's a lot of food and safety hygiene that comes in place, right? Once we've done that, we as well give food to Kechara so they can feed as well in the different centers, right? And that's something that we do throughout our hotels, but not just during Ramadan time. We do it as well on a weekly basis, right? Then the other step will be the food that cannot be reused, right? That's why I was talking about that compost machine. Is trying to then transform it into compost, right? It can be used ultimately in our gardens.
Yeah. I think that's a wonderful effort. Thank you so much for answering my question. So I'm going to open the floor again for anyone else who would like to pose questions either to Greg or to Dato. Feel free to unmute your mic. I remember when Dr. Faiza, I think, if I'm not mistaken, she has a question for Dato before this. Okay, since Dr. Faiza has not yet said anything, I'm gonna read a question from an anonymous
Hello.
participant. Oh, yeah, sorry.
Hi.
Yes, you can go first.
Hi, thank you, Faiza.
Dr.
Hi,
Hafiz.
hello, Greg. I'm Hafiz from the Faculty
Hafiz,
of
how are you?
and Tourism Management. Yeah. Thank you for agreeing to give the keynotes again. It is actually quite interesting to see how our hotels are practicing sustainable practice within the hotels settings. But again, I think I would like to ask a questions on, there is always arguments that some organization are starting to realize that, communicating green or sustainable is actually even more difficult than being one. It's easy for us to say that we are sustainable, but again, the biggest issue is whether are we practicing it and how hard that we found to practice sustainable. So, any tips that you can share coming from multinational hotels, on how organization can be committed to being more sustainable, and perhaps what to talk about to our direct customers, and perhaps for UiTM for our staff.
Yeah, look, and I think, Hafiz, it's right. It's always tricky to say or to explain what you do, and it's always as well tricky to put in place what ultimately the goals are, the vision is, right? But having done that now for a couple of years, what I realize is that the first part is to communicate internally. For me, it talks about communicating it through the hotel, communicating it through the business council ultimately, and be sure that you do it on a step-by-step basis. I always realize that it's great to have multiple projects and multiple ideas, but I think in situations like that, when you talk sometimes about changing the mentality of people or educating, rather than changing mentality, educating the teams of the hotel or customers or suppliers or business partners in terms of, hey, let's try to change some of the habits we have. Doesn't mean they're good or bad habits, but just let's try to change it. It's always a very difficult process, right? When we started talking about changing, example, the plastic bottles to glass bottles. Look, the idea is fantastic. Huh? Oh, yes, it's great. Let's just put glass bottles and remove the plastic bottles. Okay, great. But hey, what type of glass bottle you need? How long is it going to last? Because a different grade of glass as well. When you wash it, after how many washes, you have to change the bottle again. And the water, how you treat the water, how you test the water. So we started facing not barriers, but a lot of questions that started coming in. And we took a bit of time. We took about 6 months, 8 months to really bring that project to life. From the research of the supplier, plus asking questions and being comfortable in the answers we were getting, doing research on properties who had done that before, because we were the first Marriott hotel ultimately to do it in Malaysia, right? And we want to be sure that A, we don't fail, otherwise it looks pretty bad on us as well, but B, as well, that it's easy to operate. And throughout these 6 to 8 months partnership with Marriott, partnership with the owners of the hotel as well, we put that in place, right? And from the moment we implemented, we communicated to the customers. We had a little note in the room simply to explain, look, this is what we're doing, right? This is the reason why we're doing it. And look, we found out that the reaction was very positive. And that's something that is important, right? Because, when you're a guest into a room, and let's be honest, you see the little plastic bottle, you take it away. That's the reality. Look, we've all done it. Let's not lie to ourselves. We've all done it, right? Now you have this big glass bottle of 1 liter, where A, you potentially don't take it away that much. Okay? B, you become, in a way, a bit more self-conscious about it. And you start thinking, oh, it's interesting. They produce their own water. They put the glass, oh yes, so therefore there's less wastage, right? And we always put an expiry date on the water. The water really doesn't expire for months, but we put a 2 weeks expiry date simply to remind us as well to be sure we continuously check on that. And then we do our chemical, we have a chemical lab that we do tests to be sure the water is fit for consumption through the system, right? But the main part I think it's really about be sure that the talents in the hotel who place the bottles, who do the bottling, understand what is it for. That is not a mechanical job, but there's a process behind it. And then the communication went through, some social media communication, some not advertising, but communication through our website as well. And then simply throughout the hotel. Because in banquet now, when you come to a banquet room, you have the bottle that is there. No more the plastic bottle. You drink a bit and you throw it away. That's it. This bottle, you drink a bit, you can still use it the next day in your room. It's not a problem at all. Or the next week as well. Right? So we found out that was a process we put in place and it worked. And everything we do, when we started changing some of the banquets setup by using sustainable food grade containers, food grade spokes and phone, people are not used to it. People like to use, the plastic one because you're used to it. And again, it's about changing the habit. So a lot went through communicating with the event organizers, explaining what we do. And we found out that, kind of naturally, people understand it and accept it because they know that it's good and it's doing something good. So, but a lot goes through first an internal educational process. That's what is the most important, right? That's why now I want to look at that compost machine because I believe that hotels have food wastage, restaurants have that, you have that at home as well. But we just with potentially at a bigger volume. So if we can transform that into compost, means we use 100% of it, and it doesn't go really into wastage. So I think it's essentially when we do sort out cardboard and for recycling, how we make our teams understand. You have a corner for cardboard, you have a corner for paper, you have a corner for glass, and the supplier who comes and collect it. How do we check with them that they really recycle it? So it's sometimes it's a lot of what do you call that, pre-educational work to be done before you really start implementing something. Yeah.
Thanks, Greg. Just to add up, I just came back from Everly Hotel Putrajaya, and they are actually practicing the same thing that you are proposing. They are using glass bottle water, and again, I agree with you. Based on my personal experience, I did not throw away the plastic bottles. I will definitely throw away these plastic bottles every day. I've been using the same bottles, the same water for my stay, for 3 days stays, yeah? And it's actually something that I would love to practice even in my house. Yep.
That's great.
All right, wonderful. And Greg, if you're looking at the chat box, actually Datuk Touch made a comment here. He said, great contributions, Greg, for sustainable practices and CSR in Marriott. So I stayed in Marriott in various places and perhaps those information should be published. I agree, we should use glass and porcelain wares in hotels. So that's his comment. Okay, now I've got 2 more questions in the chat box. This question is directed to both Datuk Taj and Greg. So the person who was asking said, thank you for the succinct and clear presentation to both of the keynote speakers. I was wondering, Dato, Greg, because I've seen a lot of biodiversity sustainable issues being raised from an environmental standpoint, whether it's issues with forests, cities, or communities. Maybe it's just me, but I think it's important to emphasize the importance of food and water security, especially when it's highly connected with biodiversity loss. Isn't it a non-issue? All right. So any of the speakers can pick up.
Thank you very much, Dr. Nur Azra, and also Dr. Faiza below that. I'll try to answer. I think food and water is not a non-issue. It's part and parcel of the SDG. So I think if you look at my YouTube, I've a video showing people going to the market and buy banana. And where does this banana come from? Yes, it comes from a plant. But do you know that the banana been pollinated by the bats, kelawar, And not only that, the banana needs photosynthesis. It needs oxygen and it needs water to transport the micronutrient that eventually it become the banana fruits. So it's very important for our life. And in fact, if you see the Malaysian Grand Challenge grant in I think Ministry of Science, there is a part on the security of biod, and biod would always include food as well as water, although it's not been said as such, but these are the product or the element that need to have to transport water, to transport something, or to become a medium for the aquatic organism to live in. And our body, I think about 90% is water. So we need water. And yes, even the Academy of Science Malaysia is trying to address the water security issue as well as the food security issue. So even in your FRGS, LRGS, TRGS, there is very great emphasis on that topic about food and water. May I proceed to answer Faiza questions?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, sorry, great. I'll answer to both of them.
Thank you.
Faiza, we have been talking about advances in biod. Biod is a low-tech sort of work, and people are not doing a lot of high-tech. I've been talking to several people, but the buy-in is very low, and we are talking right now to engineers in University Malaysia Pahang, so that we can develop sensor for plants and animals. So in the theoretical sense, all the plant and animal will give out what we call the volatile organic compound. So if we can detect by using sensor, then we can sort of know the phenological cycle of the forest. So for the orang asli, this is very important. So they know the forest calendar. They know exactly when to harvest honey and what type of taste that you get from the honey, because it depends on the flower. So by having this sensor, you can sort of smell during the phenological changes of the forest without even going into the forest. So the sensor will smell for you, and at the same time, I was proposing to the UMP group to put up some infrared camera that will monitor the flowering and also the passing of animal. So if a tiger pass near the sensor, it will smell the tiger, but we have to confirm with an infrared camera saying, yeah, it's tiger. So instead of looking at all the photograph, the technology will identify, will tell you exactly the activity as well as the species they are interacting with the environment. Some of the sensors have been developed, but we have to integrate, we have to innovate so that it become into one sensor. So for instance, certain birds are responding to certain dew point. Dew point, you have to measure what is the temperature like, then you have the dew. And this is very important, not only for the birds, but also for the moths that are living in certain kind of forest. So we need to know that. And you talk about climate change without knowing the dew point, without knowing the changes in the relative humidity, and so on and so forth. So I have been asking my colleague to move away from the manual labor-intensive work into high technology work using the Internet of Things so that you can have real-time information being given to you right to your computer in your lab, and also to use the AI, the artificial intelligence, to determine whether this is a poacher or this is an orang asli trying to find food in the forest. Because for the orang asli, forest is just like your ATM machine. This is where they make their living, their livelihood, and so on. So if we can set up that sort of high-tech biosensor, then the government, have to employ a lot of rangers, foresters, and so on to check every tree. You just need to have this sensor planted in the forest. At every square kilometer of the forest, you have certain amount of sensor to detect the activity in the forest. You can also put a mobile station where you can move around, and this mobile station will also measure other parameters in the environment, which are very important for the security of the biodiversity in Malaysia, and giving a lot of information about the area. If the sensor can smell the type of food that being used by the tiger, then we can say, yeah, this area having a lot of food for the tiger. Then we can move the tiger from Kelantan and Terengganu, which they are having a lot of problem living in fragmented habitat, to this new area having a lot of food species for the tiger. So the technology used is very, very, very poor in Malaysia, and people are not willing to innovate because the grant is very hard to get. This is where companies, corporation, as well as millionaires and billionaires in Malaysia have to come forward to fund this sort of innovation in using technology in our biod. So we call that a precision biodiversity. That's what the term used by the Academy of Science Malaysia. And we have been talking that for the last 3 years, and I cannot have volunteers, engineers, and so on to come forward and put up a big proposal to work on that technology. I think I've answered both questions.
Yes, you have, Prof. Thank you very much. So since we have 2 more minutes, and I think we should try to close the session. So I would like to ask if there are any final comments from our speakers, Dato and then Greg. Any final words you would like to say to the participants of today's conference?
I think in this biodiversity equation, humans have to be put in the equation. We are the top predator, we are the top consumer, and yet we always demanding biodiversity must serve us. In order for the biodiversity to serve us, we have to pay back to the biodiversity, the maintenance of the biodiversity. Dr. Faiza was commenting, yes, orang asli should be taken into account in the stakeholder. I have been saying this for ages, that please take account human ecology when we talk about biodiversity. Once you take out human ecology, orang asli, from the biodi equation, we are in self-denial. Kita hanya tidak mau mengakui that we have to give back to the biodi so that we can live for the next few thousand years in the future. Thank you very much.
Very well said, Prof. Thank you so much. Greg, any final comments?
No, look, I would say that to the point of Dato, it's true that the human factor is important, right? I mean, I think in everything that we do, it's important to take that into account and to educate. We talk about our teams in the hotel, but third parties, were customers, suppliers, families, about why, in the topic of sustainability, why it's important to segregate, for example, why it's important, to pay attention to plastics, why it's important to use water at a certain level. Why things are important now more than potentially what they were 20, 30, or 40 years ago, right? Mm-hmm. And I think a lot starts with the human factor. It's 100% true, and that's the most difficult challenge, is the human. The machine does 101010 binaries, right? The human sometimes adds extra numbers in there. So I think that it starts from that educational process more than anything else, and the consistency of talking about it, I think, is the first important step. So yeah.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, both speakers, Datuk Taj and Greg, for that wonderful sum up of both of your talks for today. And with that, we heard all of the keynote speeches lined up for this conference. And on behalf of the conference, it is our hope that the participants and everyone here has learned and gained as much knowledge as we have from these experts. So before we move on to our parallel session, I would like to request for those present in this session to kindly fill in the attendance form in the link provided in our chat box. And also, we would like to request you to switch on your cameras for a group photo before we close the session. So put on your best smiles.
Okay, 1, 2, 3. Okay, next page. 1, 2, 3. Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay, so we will now continue with the remainder of the conference by moving on to the parallel sessions. So the link to your session has been emailed to you prior to the conference. So if you're unsure where to go, please get in touch with our secretariat. So the contact details can be found in the chat box. So please enjoy the rest of the presentations lined up in the parallel session, and thank you for your kind attention throughout the session. Have a wonderful day ahead, and thank you so much, everyone, the speakers and also the participants, for your attention and engagement in the session. Thank you.
Very much, Dr. Azhar, for excellent sharing for 2 days. Thank you very much.
Most welcome, Prof.